going on, guys? TG or ThunderGod here, doing a bit of a part 2 to my what if Naruto and Sasuke swapped fights. That being, what if Kakashi and Guy swapped fights. A lot of people wanted this video, and the more I worked on it, the more I thought it was interesting, so I'm presenting it today. I'll be switching these two jonin at certain points in the story to see if they could fulfill the same objective, that being maybe hold off an enemy for a prolonged period of time, defeat them, or accomplish a different objective entirely. And I'll be keeping score, so at the very end, we see who comes out with the W. That being said, like and subscribe if you're new here, and let's get into the video. So, for the first fight, we have part 1 Guy taking Kakashi's position against Zabuza on the now named Naruto bridge. Haku will be preoccupied with Naruto and co. I'll be keeping the Genin the same, and quite frankly, Guy is not going to be losing this bout. Zabuza does have a lot going for him at this point, especially if he gets his hit and missed up, but the problem is there's a lot of indicators for, first and foremost, Guy being superior to Kakashi in the beginning of the show. You can look at a couple different places for this, maybe the data books talking about the two having strength thought to be extremely near. However, a far more accurate indicator in my opinion is with Sasuke, and how with his newly acquired Sharingan, he's convinced Guy isn't bluffing when Guy boasts about being stronger than Kakashi based off Guy's movement speed being superior to Kakashi's and Sasuke's own assessment. The part 1 data book stats also somewhat support this, with Guy having higher stats, with Guy having a 5 in strength, speed, and stamina, whereas Kakashi has a 5 in like ninjutsu and like other categories like intelligence. So even if Sasuke hadn't seen Kakashi's Raikiri at this point, the fact that he'd witnessed Kakashi with his Sharingan take on Zabuza in their first fight should give him an idea to Kakashi's strength at this point in the series, which would only become more accurate with Sasuke's Dojutsu awakening. So guys shouldn't have that much trouble with Zabuza if it comes to like a fist fight or a brawl, especially if Zabuza approaches the fight the same way he did with Kakashi in the first fight, or the second, with him trying to run at Kakashi and stab him before deploying the miss. Guy would more than likely not even give Zabuza the chance to get this jutsu in. Even in Zabuza's best scenario, with him setting up the hit and miss, he wasn't able to fully take down Kakashi, with Guy being no stranger to fighting his opponents with limited visuals, being able to take on Kakashi 1v1 on the daily looking at his feet alone. All of this above is also with no mention of the 8 inner gates, which are honestly a stomp, even if you say Guy can only go up to the 5th gate in part 1. Base Sasuke was able to wipe out Zabuza's water clones that were a 10th of his strength. The gates offering tens or dozens of times the usual level of the user. Anything beyond base Guy would be murder, honestly. The only real way for Zabuza to win is via hit and miss, and even then, he canonically doesn't even lead with it in the rematch against Kakashi. So to say he tried against Guy in their first scenario is a stretch. Realistically, water style is not going to be that useful, as Guy's speed is just way too high at this point. He'd honestly just beat Zabuza up, realistically speaking. So Guy does clear round 1. Kakashi's round 1 fight is him against the 30% Kisame clone with Team 3 stuck in the water bubble. The reason I have him already in Shippuden is that Guy doesn't fight anybody in part 1, really. So I kind of have to give Kakashi a weirder placement. He'll just be taking that spot. Now, this fight is interesting due to how Kisame's 30% double was able to throw out far more attacks than Itachi's, which, you know, is probably more so a result of him just having a greater chakra supply. Getting the better end of base Guy and forcing him underwater with his physical might alone. I would honestly see Kakashi pulling something similar to what he did in part 1, replicating Kisame's jutsu in response to his attacks. Kakashi in this situation actually doesn't have to defeat Kisame in the same way that Guy did. He really just has to stall for Neji to break the water bubble and defeat the clones just like he did in the normal timeline, as Guy and Kisame actually fight for a very short amount of time. I'll say this too, Kakashi's also no stranger to underwater combat just based off his fights from Zabuza. So Kakashi honestly can just continuously copy the same jutsu as Kisame and just kind of, you know, stonewall him until Neji breaks free. Not saying Kakashi's like going to do this, because he also does have Kamui, which would be a GG. If the fight does get to it, there's no real reason like he should get pushed to that point. There really shouldn't be a reason that Kakashi with his rough speed can't just Raikiri around and take out the Kisame clone. Especially with like Raikiri Kakashi commonly being compared to 6K Guy. At least in the war. I'm also going to get into Guy a little bit later, because he is interesting in terms of like if you think he gets stronger or not. But I'll say this. Kakashi is shown like evenly matched with the 30% Itachi clone, who Itachi is generally like considered by every metric in the series superior to, whether that be the data book, you read the manga, or maybe looked at like the Generations video game where like they have the cutscene of Itachi and Kisame sparring. There's just no real way to say this. So if Kakashi like in his like combat speed is able to like tango with this Itachi, there really shouldn't be a reason that, Kisame is overwhelming him. If he does, Kamui is always in play at this point. He can stall out, and he really doesn't even have to defeat Kisame. It's just to wait for Neji to get free. And when all of Team Guy was actually attacking Kisame, or the 30% clone, he actually kind of was calling them annoying and was getting pressured underwater and all this. So Kakashi would have no reason to lose. So Kakashi also does get past this round. Now, round 2 is Guy with Team Asuma taking Kakashi's position versus Kakazu and Hidan. Now, I'm going to lead with this. and I'm going to talk about it for a sec. This is somewhat dependent, like with the Shippuden stuff with Guy, if you believe like Guy improves at all throughout the duration of Shippuden. The reason I think this is somewhat debatable is that his databook stats actually don't change at all for the entirety of the show. From the first, second, and third databook, they all stay the exact same, whereas Kakashi actually has some changes. Maybe you could say he's still growing stronger, but like his stats don't change inherently because he's still like the strongest in that category. Regardless, you kind of have to go with one interpretation over the other, just because otherwise, it's kind of like impossible to place Guy in this situation. If you think Guy is as strong as he is in the war arc throughout the whole like entirety of Shippuden, like he's just that strong. He's that strong in the 6th gate. He doesn't get any stronger. Then he's wiping this matchup. There's just no real way. Maybe if you want to argue like 6th gate, which is comparable to like Kakashi's Raikiri, which Hidan can like intercept at this point, but obviously we know Kakashi improves dramatically throughout the duration of Shippuden. But 7th gate Guy with Hirodora is just far above these level of the Akatsuki members, with his data book even supporting as such. So if his strength is maintained, like he's like the same Hirodora that's like shoving Madara's Susanoo off the battlefield, there's just no real way to argue for Kakazu, whether that be like his diamond hardening scaling to that or his speed scaling to that in any capacity. Guy, even in the 6th gate, can like combat the version 2 Edo Jinchuriki. Whereas, like, where a lot of people draw for Kakazu is, like, this relating, Yugito to KCM Naruto. So, even at the best, like, Guy would still scale above that. The win condition for this group is to simply stall until Naruto and Co. arrive to support them. As, from that point, Naruto would take on Kakazu and just Rasen Shuriken him. Case closed, bada bada. Hidan's not going to be able to tag Guy in this situation. His speed is just too much, arguably even in base. Kakazu is a lot more interesting because I could definitely see him, for example, like maybe like brawling it a bit with Guy in like a taijutsu scenario. Maybe he's actually even able to like tank the 6th gate, which, is a little harder to determine in terms of like AP where it would stack up to. I'll say this, if you think the 6th gate is on the level of Raikiri in terms of like AP, then it would be able to break through Kakazu's diamond hardening. I know there's the whole elemental disadvantage and advantage point, but Kakashi's Raikiri does have to be relative in terms of AP for it to be effective. It's like if 3rd Raikage being a perfect example of how Naruto's Rasen Shuriken just wasn't able to take him down even though it had the elemental advantage. So Shikamaru would probably proceed the same way, taking Hidan out. And in which case, it kind of falls to Guy, who I don't think is really going to be getting tagged by Kakazu at all, even in his 6th gate form. I actually don't even think Kakazu's like extra hearts would even be that useful, just due to the nature of Guy in the gates and how just his taijutsu and like raw stats are boosted again. So for example, right, even if you argue like he potentially didn't shoot Hirodora out because he has teammates nearby, which is a valid criticism to like him just Hirodora GG, his taijutsu is amped, so he could probably just go around and break the faces of the hearts in a similar capacity to what he tried to do with Madara and just like do a little bit of a taijutsu barrage before he let in with Hirodora. So this point is a little debatable, I will grant you, but if you go off the assumption that Guy like doesn't change throughout Shippuden and he's actually that brolic throughout it, which is honestly pretty consistent, unless you count like him training, maybe that's a point. We'll talk about some later stuff, but generally Guy should clear this, as he doesn't really have to take on Kakazu that much. He just really has to stall out and weave out until Naruto and Co arrive, in which case he can kind of like take a back foot and just support Naruto. Maybe you could say if he uses 7th gate he gets fatigued, but he's going to be able to take out hearts. I don't think it's much more of a question of that. So I'll give Guy the clear on this one. Now, for our round 2 for Kakashi, we have Kakashi versus Four Tails Naruto. Now, you might be wondering, where did I get Four Tails Naruto? Well, in the Naruto filler Power, which was actually supposed to be a movie originally, that's why it looks so nice, There's a snake cultivated by Kabuto that could replicate genetic data, and said snake got inside Naruto, with Kurama at this point, not being boys with Naruto, proceeding to feed it chakra, giving it the form of the Four Tails, with Kurama feeding it more and more chakra as time went on, with the double even reaching a full QB size and performing tailed beast bombs. So it's a direct 1-to-1 because it is the Nine Tails chakra. Now the biggest question we're talking about this matchup is, can Kakashi actually breach the Four Tails defenses? That's the main problem with this matchup, and we see this with Orochimaru and Guy, who also does fight this Four Tails, struggle with it and are unable to breach the Four Tails cloak. Orochimaru's Kusanagi blade was unable to breach it, and Gated Guy with Gated Lee's punches were unable to bypass the cloak. We don't have a direct confirmation of what gate Guy and Lee used. I would assume 5th. But, you know, it is up to interpretation. We don't know. So, I will grant you, it is a little debatable on that point since we don't know exactly. The only person we've actually seen on screen take down the version 2, QB cloak is Sage Mode Naruto, who actually decimates this Four Tails Naruto, which means a couple things. Naruto could have either used Frog Kumite with his ability to bypass conventional durability, or he just blatantly is that strong to the point he can just smack the cloak off his duplicate. Could be both or one or the other, but nothing in the series at this point would suggest Kakashi with his Raikiri or any technique save Kamui would be enough to tear through the Four Tails cloak. Kakashi just doesn't have the crazy AP showings with his Raikiri to give a confident answer in terms of he'd be able to breach the cloak. With the Four Tails being commonly considered I guess you could say Sanin tier, it's what's threatening to the Sanin. With Kakashi, kind of does see himself below off his assessment of Jiraiya dealing with pain. It is very possible that Kakashi could Kamui this Four Tails Naruto, potentially removing him from the battlefield. The problem is that the Four Tails is a lot like Orochimaru, where he can launch his whole body out of single tears in his previous body. So essentially the win condition would have to be Kakashi Kamui's the Four Tails into the Kamui dimension, which he actually should be able to do considering he was able to teleport Datara's clone explosion away. Now, while it's possible, is it probable? I would say not, due to the fact that Kamui at this point in this series is treated as a last resort for Kakashi. This is displayed against Kakazu, Pain, and even Sasuke in the 5 Kage Summit when he uses the Susanoo arrow. I would definitely see Kakashi attempting to use it on a tail beast bomb of sorts rather than the Four Tails itself. And if the technique fails, Kakashi will have physical ramifications at this point in the series as well. His stamina and his physical body will take a big hit. So I can't see Kakashi forcing the Four Tails into a retreat just due to the fact that Kamui is the only real win condition for him. It's debatable in my opinion if he'd be able to use it on the Four Tails. And while I grant you it is possible, I don't think it's probable. You can actually make a case that Kakashi might be faster than the Four Tails at this point, especially if Gated Lee is able to just combo and ping pong him off of Guy, which Kakashi would have the support of in this matchup. I'll say this, I do think Kakashi can stall out the Four Tails as the fight was actually very short. I just don't believe he's going to be able to blow him back in the same capacity as Guy would. So he should be able to at least stall for this long for the Four Tails to retreat as Kabuto retreats with his Four Tails. So, but push come to shove, he can Kamui it away and his speed should be somewhat relative at this point, at least to Gated Lee. So I'll actually give Kakashi a pass on this one as well. Now, for round 3, we have Might Guy versus the Deva and Asura path. Now, I want to make this ridiculously clear, crystal almost, that this is Guy versus the Deva and Asura path alone, with reinforcements who will come in after a prolonged period of time in the bout. Got it? Okay, good. I had to make that clear for some people in the last video. Now, it should be pretty clear that Gated Guy is absolutely needed in this matchup. And quite frankly, Guy either gets eliminated off rip or he goes into the gates, just due to the nature of how nobody knows the Deva path's abilities, meaning Guy has a very high chance of losing if he actually does get pulled into the Asura path like Kakashi, because he doesn't use lightning substitutions or any substitutions in general. Now, I don't believe Guy would be able to blatantly overwhelm the Deva path with this Sega's Gate alone, just because he's going to be dealing with shared vision along with no idea of how the Deva path's abilities operate. So for example, right, he might try what he did against Kisame, blitz in front of him and get repelled back. That's probably the most likely scenario I see. Now with that being said, I do believe because of his amped speed, he could weave around and stall out until reinforcements arrive as Kakashi did, as he doesn't actually need to fight that long until help arrives. Now, this would essentially turn into 6K Guy with Choza, Choji, and other Leaf Shinobi as support. The issue here, though, is, again, I don't believe Guy would have the same level of analysis or come to the same conclusion Kakashi did, in the sense that he'd come up with a plan to take down the Deva Path. I think he could deduce, like, the pull and push properties. Maybe not the ninjutsu part, because he doesn't use ninjutsu. But he's not going to be able to come up with a plan on the same level of Kakashi's to where he traps the Deva Path. I will say, though, because of the way like Choji and Choza entered the battle and the Asura Path getting crushed, Might Guy really only has to deal with the Deva Path at this point. As the Asura Path, yeah, it can like jump in front of Kakashi's Raikiri, but the problem is that Kakashi was so chakra fatigued at this point that his Raikiri was not one at full power. So this leads to the obvious question, 7th gate. Now, the 7th gate is interesting to talk about, as Guy may use it in a physical capacity, like that being to amp his stats further, but he actually will not use, or more than likely will not use, Hirodora in this situation, as he wouldn't risk nuking the Lee village with a giant shockwave like that, especially when he has allies surrounding him. So I actually wouldn't see Guy using Hirodora. If he does, that's a possible win con, although we don't know how the Deva Path would react to the shockwave. We know it can repel ninjutsu weapons and swords, but this may actually be too much for him. That being, maybe you think it's like too fast as well. It might just blatantly blitz the Deva Path. This might be consistent if he's not able to blow back Six Tails Naruto fully and get slammed back with the recoil. I think it's a bit out there to say the Deva Path could just blatantly repel Hirodora, at least with his basic properties. A case could be made for Almighty Push, but if Guy shoots a Hirodora at the Deva Path, it really won't be able to stop it. But again, Guy really wouldn't be able to shoot it out in this scenario regardless, as it's nuking the village. So whether or not the Deva Path can stop it is irrelevant. If you were going to argue for 7th gate, it would just have to be his Amp Taijutsu, similar to the barrage again he threw out against Madara. If this is the case, and you go off the logic earlier that Guy doesn't get stronger throughout Shippuden, then him with his 7th gate Taijutsu plus the assisted support from Choza and Ko, I would see it would be too much for the Deva Path, just due to the fact that the minute he repels, Guy has a full 5-second window to just intercept him at this point. Even if they don't come up with like the same one-to-one plan, Guy is at a real big power cliffing at this point, being commonly compared to like KCM Naruto, who's able to duke it out with Pain, who's like, he by his own assessment says he's stronger than when he fought Pain. So there is a bit of a gap here. If you don't think Guy gets stronger again, then it's almost impossible to place Guy at this point. Then you would have nothing to say. You would just say, you'd have no basis to work off of. So I'll say Guy clears against 2 paths of Pain, with support from Choza, Choji, and other Leaf Shinobi. Again, for anybody that's just... Now for Kakashi's round 3, we have Kage Summit Kakashi versus Kisame no Samehada in the ocean area right outside Turtle Island, with Kakashi's objective being to stop Kisame from linking intel to the Akatsuki. Now, you might be asking why do I have Kisame on this list twice, and it's really quite simple. Guy literally only fights Kisame throughout Shippuden, weirdly enough, and in the War Arc, Kakashi and Guy are both present for a lot of the same fights that are primarily group-based battles, so it is what it is. Now, Kakashi's gonna pull up in the exact same position as Guy, and Kisame is going to summon his 1,000 sharks in an attempt to have one of them go through and leak the intel to the Akatsuki. Now, the problem is that Kakashi doesn't really have any crazy area of effect moves like the 6th gate does to stop the tidal wave of sharks like Guy does. I'm not saying the assault would take him down. I'm saying he doesn't have what it takes in his arsenal to like blatantly like stonewall the assault and stop any sharks from getting through. Kamui is too precision based. He's not comboing away a tidal wave with it. Stop that. And a lot of his like basic jutsu just don't cover that wide of a range. And on top of this, right, on top of Kakashi not being able to stop this onslaught of sharks, Kakashi would more than likely not be able to combo away the water shark bomb at this point in the series. It seems to be way too big for him. You can make a case like the speed he actually might be able to keep up with if he's able to perceive Sasuke's Susanoo arrow. But the size is just way too big at this point. This isn't necessarily to say Kisame is stronger than Kakashi at this point in the series, but more so to say Kakashi isn't that well equipped to take on these large-scale techniques from a terrain that only benefits Kisame. Literally, Kisame has everything going for him at this point for him to leak the intel, and he still wasn't able to do it against Guy. But Kakashi's not Guy in this situation. He's not going to be able to stop him. And even if he does, Water Shark Bomb, it really isn't going to have too much. He might honestly try and throw ninjutsu into it if he doesn't Kamui. So there really isn't too much to say. So this one's actually a bit simpler, but it just leads to the situation being an L for him. He actually would not have been able to stop what Guy stopped in that specific point in the series. So Guy actually ends off the video with the 3-0, and Kakashi ends with the 2-1. I was debating going on into the work and having Guy fight Obito in the Kamui dimension in DMS Kakashi versus one-eyed, non-God tree absorbed Rinnegan Madara with the 10 tails. But I just didn't include them. I didn't like the way the discussions came out, and I didn't really want to post that if I'm not really satisfied with the content. So that's the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, check out the prequel down below. I'll leave that in the description. And yeah, catch you next time. Bye-bye.